Welcome to the Tribe of Testimonies. Here you will find conversations with faithful Native American members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sharing their stories and their love of the Savior. My name's Andrea Hales. I'm Navajo, and I'm glad that you've decided to come and join us today. This week, my guest is Ruth Young. She was so much fun. She emailed me a while ago and told me that her mom had found this podcast, and so they were really excited about it. And I said, "Do you want to be one of my guests?" And she's like, "Sure." And so she sent me this outline of things that she wanted, that she thought maybe we could talk about. And the fun thing about it was that she had her mom and her brother put in some notes as well. So it was like getting just a little bit of a family conversation, and I really loved reading that. And then when Ruth was here, she came to my house. We had so much fun. In fact, she stayed after for a long time, and we had lunch together. And she's my new friend, and I'm so glad that she's my new friend. So I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. There were things we talked about that weren't even mentioned at all on the outline. So I learned a lot about her, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, today I am in person with my new friend, Ruth Young, and I would love it, Ruth, if you would introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah.
There's only one of you.
Right, yeah. I sure hope so. I'm Ruth Young. I am from Sterling, Utah. My dad, his heritage is almost entirely from the United Kingdom, England, Ireland, and Wales. My mom is San Carlos Apache. We are from the Grinders clan, but we just recently learned that, just a few years ago, which has been super cool.
How did you find out just recently that's...
Oh, it came up at a family gathering, and we dug around and did some research, and we're able to find out. We haven't known for a long time. It's not something that everybody tracks on the reservation out there. So
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. So my favorite part, what is one of your favorite things about your heritage? Whether that's a story or a celebration or a tradition or just a way of doing things. What's one of your favorite things, especially if it relates to the gospel of Jesus Christ?
I think one of the things that comes to mind pretty readily is that people are really conscientious of nature a lot, and that's one of the things that really sticks with me. I didn't grow up with a lot of Apache traditional things, but I was very conscientious of nature, and my parents were growing up, especially my mom, well, my dad too, but it was there was a spiritual connection to nature. It felt like growing up, and I've always enjoyed that and loved that, and it has helped me in the course of my decision making for things like my career or like even the car I purchased and stuff like that. So yeah.
Great. Mm-hmm. Cool, thanks. So what is your career? What do you do these days?
Oh, I teach music. I teach band and guitar at a charter school, and I also teach 5th and 6th grade ukulele and student council. So
fun.
Oh, it's pretty entertaining. Yeah, it's a great job.
Where'd you get your degree to be able to teach?
At Utah State. I actually started at Snow College as a music major. When I went to the day that I went to register, I almost registered as an engineering major, but somebody in the advising office saw that I had a music scholarship and said that I needed to go talk to the music department to find out what the requirements for the scholarship were. So I walked over there, and Vance Larson, the guy who was in charge of the music department at the time, was like, well, you need to be in band. And he's like, if you do engineering, you have to have a minor. He's like, you may as well minor in music and then get that out of the way and then start the engineering stuff because you're going to take some math prerequisites or whatever anyway. And I was like, okay. So I walked back over to the advising office and we got all registered for like the first the first year of the music major is the same as the music minor. So I get all registered for the music classes. Couldn't fit a math class in that first semester, but it didn't really matter because my math scores were high enough that you're like, oh, you can wait till second semester. But then I just never registered for that first math class to start the engineering degree. Just kept going in music. And then I transferred to Utah State and graduated there with my bachelor's in music ed. And then 10 years later, I went back to Utah State and got my master's in secondary ed with an emphasis in music.
That is so wonderful.
It was pretty fun.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Where did you teach? Did you teach between the two degrees, your bachelor's and master's?
Yeah. In order to apply for the master's program at Utah State, you have to have, I think at the time it was 3 years of teaching experience. And I was teaching at a charter school up there in Logan. And the first classes I took basically because the professors figured I was convenient. And so they were starting this emphasis in music for the first time. And they're like, hey, we need some people to take these classes. Like, will you sign up for a class or two? And I was like, sure, I'll sign up for a class. And they were all going to be in the evening or whatever. And that's kind of how I got started. And then I went full into it a little bit later and was able to work part-time, like teaching part-time, and then finish my master's degree. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Were you raised in the church?
Yes, I was.
Are your parents both longtime members or?
My dad was also born and raised in the church. We have like a whole long line of, pioneer ancestry on dad's side of the family. My mom was a convert when she was just a teenager. When she was getting ready to go to college, she really wanted to go to the University of Arizona in Tucson, and she was in the school counselor's office and saw a pamphlet for BYU and just sort of picked it up and looked at it and thought maybe she kind of wanted to go there. And so she asked the counselor about it, and he was like, well, you're going to need a signature from your bishop or branch president. And she was like, oh, okay. Like, so her and one of her aunts went to go get this signature, and the branch president was like, I'll sign it, but you're going to need to take the lessons. And so she started taking the lessons at the branch president's office. His name was President Taylor. And I actually met him a few times. He's a pretty cool guy. His wife was really neat too. But she took the lessons from the missionaries and was baptized. And my dad was one of the missionaries that helped teach her.
Sweet.
Yeah. So she was baptized and ended up going to BYU. And then my parents didn't date until they were at BYU together. But
yeah, that's so great.
Mm-hmm. No, it's pretty fun.
You grew up in a small town. I also grew up in a similar small town.
Yeah.
Yeah. How was that?
It was so much fun. Like, I didn't realize as a kid how much fun I was having that other people weren't having. But my hometown only had about 300 people in it. And
oh, mine's a booming metropolis compared to that.
Oh,
Mine was about 2,000.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. You guys had, like, actual streets and stuff. We had mostly dirt roads, like, and it was just like the main highway 89 going through town is paved and nothing else. And we got chip and seal when I was in like middle school, and it was a big deal. But like we could just run around, and because the town was so small, everybody knew who we were and like what we were up to, and it was really a lot of freedom for kids. And I remember like coming home from school and being like, hey mom, can I go play with, the neighbor kids or whatever? And she'd be like, yeah, just, be back before dark. And we'd go ride our bikes all over the place and all over town. And we'd go visit Ike Fotts, who had like the best tire swing ever. And we'd go visit Mrs. Valentine. And she had like the softest grass. And we'd like do somersaults on her grass. Like her lawn was the first lawn I ever did a cartwheel on. We'd visit Rose McKiff, and she'd play the harmonica for us sometimes.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
It was so fun. And then I realized that as I got older, that is not characteristic of like, people to just like let their kids out and be like, yeah, just be back before dark. It's probably 6, 7, 8 years old, running around town. And maybe it sounds more dramatic than it really was, because as a kid, you think it's like the coolest thing ever, but
I think it's awesome. And it's nice too that you had neighbors that you could do that with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had a great time.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
So how many kids did you grow up with?
I have two brothers, an older brother and a younger brother. My older brother is about a year and a half older than I am, and he was the one responsible for most of the first aid that had to be done on me when I was a kid. And
First aid.
yeah, but he got pretty good at it. We were always crashing our bikes somewhere. So my younger brother is 7 years younger than I am.
Wow.
And so I played with him quite a bit because, I thought he was entertaining as a little kid, but he's like far enough younger than me that he was never really annoying, if that makes sense. And then he was always just a lot of fun, and we played with him a lot. But yeah, I did have a set of cousins too. So like my dad's older brother also, well, he had another brother who lived in town for a while too, but my dad's older brother, Bob, Uncle Bob and Wynn had 9 kids. And like, so in between our family and Bob and Wynn's family, my older brother was the oldest, and then my cousin Amy, and then me and my cousin Nina, and the 4 of us would do a lot of things together. We were always running around and playing and stuff. So
cousin brothers and sisters. Totally.
Yep.
Yeah. I have some of those too. So
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good way to grow up.
Yeah. Did you serve a mission?
I did not. No. When I was at Snow, I remember praying to see like what I should do and turning in mission papers because my friends were doing it, and I got a distinct impression not to go. And I was really puzzled by that, but I didn't question it really at all. I was like, I'm not asking that question again because it was so distinct. And I remember mentioning that to my bishop, and he was like, well, you have your answer. You're just going to have to move forward with it. And he's like, it's probably something you'll do later in life. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then when I got to Utah State, I became really good friends with a girl named McKay, and another girl named Michelle, and another one named Allie. And if I had gone on a mission, I would have missed all 3 of them. And those 3 are probably like the best friends that I've ever had.
Yeah.
I talk to them all on a pretty regular basis. McKay and Michelle both live near here, and I talk to them both probably once a day or more. I'm sure I drive them crazy sometimes, but yeah. But I lived with Allie in Logan. She still lives in Logan, and she and I were roommates for 9 years, I think, and we had a blast together.
That's so fun. Yeah. That's super fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any special someone in your life? No,
boys don't like me. And I don't know what that is. Well, they're all like buddy friends and stuff, and so they're like, hey, I have like a date coming up. What should I buy my girlfriend for Valentine's Day? What should I buy my girlfriend for her birthday? And at some point, I was just like, you know what? Like, buy her flowers, get her a necklace or whatever. But you darn well better be getting me something too.
That's awesome.
It's like, if I'm gonna sit here and give you advice, you owe me something too. But I can probably count on my 10 fingers how many times I've been asked on a date.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I did ask, I've had a couple of really good guy friends in my life, and I asked one of them, Mike, one time what the deal was. And he's like, you're smart, and guys find that really intimidating. And I was like, well, I don't think I'm that smart. And he's like, well, you kind of are. I was like, thanks, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I asked another friend the same question a few years later, and he basically told me the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm only 5 feet tall. I can't be that intimidating, right?
Yeah.
Now, like being in my 40s and single, like, when you sit and talk to people and stuff about this thing, and I go to a singles ward, and like all the guys there are like happy and friendly and cheerful. And, they always ask you about like what you do and what your education background is. And it seems like everybody that I know that has like a master's degree is just kind of like, it's like we're all kind of like brushed into a mental corner.
Oh, wow. That's terrible.
And it's like, but they're like, smart, wonderful, beautiful people. And it's like, y'all need to like ask these people on dates. And we're just normal people trying to do our job, But I think sometimes the guys don't realize that like education comes from other places other than universities. Because we have people who are highly skilled in their jobs. They're like highly skilled electricians or businessmen or whatever, and they get intimidated by like a master's degree or even a doctorate degree if you have doctorate degrees or even multiple masters. And they get intimidated by that, but then it's almost like they're discounting their own experience and education. And it's like, you're a master electrician and you're in pretty high demand. Like that's nothing to sneeze at. And that's really cool. And that's an education too. But
totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So back to where you teach right now, have you had any interesting experiences while you've taught there?
The whole education experience has just been interesting. I've been teaching for 18 years, and definitely the climate has changed in teaching. Other experiences, I think most of the interesting ones happen with the adults in the building. Like, kids are super entertaining. I love children. They're just so much fun. But like every now and then, like, adults will ask me funny things or weird questions, and they're just trying to clarify and become educated most of the time. And then sometimes they're just like, they just don't know that what they said was weird. Uh-huh. And so I had an experience one time with a parent, and we were at a 9th grade graduation ceremony, and there's like all the teachers are sitting in a couple of rows or whatever, and this parent comes up to me and says, "You're looking really brown today." And I was like, "Thank you."
What?
I was like, what is that all about? I was like, that's super strange. Anyway, like, and then she kind of just walked away, and my science teacher friend April next to me was like, "Does she know that you're Native American?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Her kid knows." Like, I taught her kid knows. I don't know if she knows, but it was just such a weird, like, that was a weird experience. Like,
it's weird.
And it's like, I'm brown every day. I don't know. It doesn't change.
Oh my gosh.
So, but, for the most part, people are just a lot of fun. And, I had a coworker for a while who was Navajo, and she was a lot of fun. We would tease and banter back and forth quite a bit because, Navajos and Apaches aren't supposed to get along, I guess. I don't know, but we always seem to have a fine time anyway. Uh-huh. But we always had a lot of fun with that. And then my history teacher friend Troy is always really great to ask questions and look for insights and things like that. And so he's always like, "Hey, I saw this thing, and I was really curious about, like, they said this. What does that mean?" And he asked me about, I can't remember what comment spurred on a conversation about Sherman Alexie. So Troy had read a comment about it, and I gave him a copy of The Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven. Uh-huh. And was like, "You should read this one. It deals with a lot of the social issues that people experience going back and forth." And I was like, and then come back and ask me a bunch of questions, and I'll tell you, like, what my experience was a little bit about. And he's like, "Okay." So, and then he comes back and he's like, "I was really bothered by the idea that a person would feel like they don't fit in one place, and then they still don't fit in another place." He's like this. Oh, what he had read was The True Diary of a Part-Time Indian.
Okay.
That's not the whole title, but I can't remember the whole title. He's like, and he was really bothered by the fact that the boy in the story doesn't fit in on the reservation, and also doesn't fit in the white high school that he's attending. And I was like, yeah, I can kind of understand that, although I didn't have that. I haven't dealt with that issue until I was older. I didn't have that experience as a child, just because the town that I grew up in was so small that everybody knows everybody. And, when there's only 300 people, you either accept them or you deal with trying to avoid them in the gas station store for the rest of your life, which is way too much trouble because everybody's at Lily's, but yeah, it was a funny thing. So he's always been really good about asking really good questions and that sort of a thing. And I have a lot of experiences with coworkers who are asking really good questions about, "Hey, we want to do this thing, or we're studying this thing." And, the elementary teachers will come upstairs and be like, "Hey, 4th grade is learning about whatever thing. What are some really good resources that we could look to teach these kids appropriately about the cultures in the state, or to teach these kids appropriately about, what should really be going on in the cultures?" Because they're trying to avoid the whole, like, Thanksgiving Indian stereotype that happens, you know, when they're like staple paper feathers to a paper headband and put it on a 6-year-old and send them home.
Yeah, I'm glad that they do that with you guys.
Yeah.
Because my kids have even had that same old tradition stuff, and I'm like, I'm available.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know everything, but I can teach you more than you're teaching them.
Yeah, it's true. And we had some fun experiences this year too. I have, like, for my music teacher connections, I have a friend at Whitehorse High School, which is in Montezuma Creek on the Navajo reservation, like just in that little corner that's in Utah. And Kim Schaefer was the band director at Whitehorse for a long time, and then became the principal. And back in January, I called Kim and I was like, I want you to tell me, like, how you're doing. Like, what is your mental health state? And she's like, everything's crazy. She's like, I'm crazy. The staff is crazy. Everything's crazy because we're just trying to, like, make it through the end of the year. And I was like, that makes sense. And I was like, is there anything I can do to help? And she's like, you know what? We're really concerned about the mental health of our students because they have been distance learning for this entire school year. She's like, actually, since last March 2020.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah. Like, she kind of told me what she was worried about and what some of the students had been experiencing. And I was like, well, what can we do? And she's like, can you just send down fun stuff? And I was like, well, sure. Like, and then she's like, and if you can get cards for face cards, she's like, we have a math project that we want them to do if they all have face cards. And she's like, and we're not sure if everybody has face cards, but, you know, but she's like, if you can gather up some of those too. So our school usually does, well, because I'm the student council advisor, we usually do a few service projects in a year. And the student council were like, well, we could do like a donation drive and have people bring stuff. So we prepared a list of like what kinds of things we should be gathering and collecting. And Kim said that they had to be able to fit in a grocery sack because that's how they're delivering things. They've been putting school supplies and materials inside paper bags and delivering them on the bus system along with the food for the kids. And those bus drivers have been really key in the success of their program this year. You know, like, they're super important all the time, but the bus drivers are like the kids' connection to school these days. And so they've become even more important. But so, you know, we had to specify that whatever was going to go in the bag has to fit with whatever materials are being sent home for the next project or whatever. And so we made a list of things that we could potentially send home. And we sent the first email out to parents and notified things. And the next morning, like before school even started, I got an email back from a parent of a second grade student that said, are you really doing a project for Whitehorse High School? I went to Whitehorse High School. I grew up in Montezuma Creek. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Anyway, so I talked with her a little bit and I was like, would you be willing to do an assembly for our students and talk to them about like the Navajo culture and kind of give them an idea about who this service project is for? And our middle school students and also, well, the students didn't agree. The students' teachers agreed to set up like a pen pal letter system to try and start something, just so that even if the students at Whitehorse weren't able to respond, they could get a letter from somebody, you know? And so it's like, it would be really great for our middle school students to know more about who they're writing these letters to. And she's like, yeah, she's like, I'm definitely willing to do that. So she agreed to come. And then she sent me an email later. She's like, is it okay if I bring my parents? I was like, well, yeah,
please.
That'll be so cool. And it turns out her dad was an art teacher at Whitehorse for a while too. And Kim totally knows the dad, the art teacher. And they were so fun. And they came, and our students were just enthralled with the whole thing. Like, they came with a whole display. They had a flag and they had like a little miniature hogun, you know, and all kinds of stuff. And the second grade daughter was pulled into, and they put her in all of the traditional dress, and they had her dance a little bit. And the grandfather sang, and the students loved that, like hearing him, you know, like he sang a song for them and played his drum. And when he was done, they were like, do it again. Do it again.
That's awesome.
And so it was so fun. It was so fun to have them come, and the students loved it. And so we ended up, my friend Becky, who is the math teacher at school, has a minivan. We ended up taking out the back seat of her minivan, and we filled it with boxes, and there were like books and games, like little foam footballs and all kinds of stuff in there that we had gathered from the donation drive, and we filled it, like packed it full to take it down to Whitehorse. And after school one day, we drove down to Bluff. We stayed in Bluff and then met with Kim like the next morning and transferred all of the stuff over. And then, you know, I had them drive around Bluff a little bit. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with that area at all very much.
Not very much. A little bit, but not much.
They have one of the coolest roads that connects, like, if you go over toward Mexican Hat from Bluff, and then you go up on top of Cedar Mesa, a part of the road that goes up the side of the mesa is called the Moki Dugway. And it's part of the state highway system, but it's not paved because they're worried that I guess this is what I heard, so this is just rumor, but they're worried that if they pave it, it'll be too slick when it rains. Oh. So it's purposely left unpaved. Anyway, but you drive up and it's like the most gorgeous views. You can see like the Valley of the Gods from up there, and you can see like Monument Valley in the distance, and you can see across that San Juan River Valley. And it's just beautiful. But yeah, they were like, you're going to drive the van up there and we're not going to, like, we'll just watch. Like, okay. You guys just buckle in and I'll drive up. And if you want me to stop, I'll stop. And, you know, we stopped at the top and took pictures and stuff. But wow, it was really neat. And it was just such a cool experience to go down there and meet with Kim and pass on some stuff. And she sent us a nice thank you note. And then just recently, just a couple of weeks ago, our librarian came to us and was like, so we have more books. When are you going that way again? And I was like, well, could probably go, and I can probably go in the next few weeks. Like I'll call Kim and see if I can set up another appointment. And we were able to go, gosh, was it really just last weekend? Was last Sunday Mother's Day? Like, yeah, that was really just last weekend. We went last weekend again and dropped off more books, and it was just books this time. But no, we did get some games, but it was fun to go down there and drop off more stuff. And she's like the last load of things you brought down. She's like we had so much fun going through it and distributing and figuring out like, oh hey, we could send this to this family or this family and there were a whole bunch of books for like elementary kids, and Whitehorse doesn't have any elementary kids, but there's an elementary school nearby, and they were like so excited to be able to share with them. And it was just really a lot of fun to be able to do that. So it was one of the better experiences we've had recently, and especially with all the COVID stuff, that it's just, you know, things have been really toned down. We normally do a lot of field trips and a lot of activities, and we haven't been able to do as much of that. And so to involve our students in a service project and then to be able to add meaning to it, for them was really neat. And they really went all out for us and provided a lot of stuff. You can fit a lot of stuff in the back of a minivan. So, yeah.
That's so awesome. Yeah,
it was really neat.
I'm glad that happened with all of your kids and with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm hoping we can keep it going.
Yeah, cool. Mm-hmm. So you said you're in a singles ward right now. Mm-hmm. What do you have a calling?
I don't currently have a calling.
Are you guys back in church yet?
We are, and we were online for a long time. I was released from the Relief Society presidency in March. When I first attended the ward, I was the ward chorister for, I don't know, a few months.
Oh, now you're going to be the ward choir director.
Oh, well, we can't have a choir yet, so
that's true.
We have a fabulous choir director, actually. Yeah, Dallin's really great. But anyway, I was a ward chorister for a while, and the organist that I was with loved it because he was like, I would rather just follow a conductor than have to worry about keeping time myself. Yeah. And so like I would text him like all the tempo markings, like, hey, we're going to take this one this fast. We're going to take this one this fast. And like, he'd be like, practice it at tempo. And we'd get up there and like making the whole word sing at tempo. Cause
Who likes a dirge when it's not supposed to be a dirge?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And I understand that, like, I can't play the piano myself, so there's no way I could play any of the hymns, like, at tempo. But yeah, Tanner was great. Anyway, I was called just after that to be the Relief Society secretary in my Relief Society. And then when that presidency was released, I was called to be the secretary again. And then our secretary merged. I don't know if you know that, but our singles ward has got 3 relief societies in it.
Whoa!
It used to have 4, and this is pretty. This is pretty common in singles wards because there's way more single women than there are men's. We have 1 elders quorum, but
oh no,
we have three different relief societies. So yeah, it's the stats on singles is crazy. But anyway, there's way more women than men. Anyway, so at one point, our relief society merged with another relief society, and then they set up a new presidency, and I was called to be the secretary for that presidency. And then when that presidency was released, I was put in as second counselor in the Relief Society presidency, and then I was just released from that, and they haven't found a new home for me yet.
Yeah.
And like the week that I was released, the bishop sent me a text, and he's like, "Be prepared. There are a lot of people who like want to put you on their list." And I was like, okay, whatever. he's like, are you thinking about anything? And I was like, well, no, I'll just do whatever. You know, like I get called it. Like actually, one of the times I was called the secretary, I was supposed to be on activities committee. They had called me to activities committee, and then I went in to be sustained, and they're like, we're actually going to change your calling. And I was like, sure, fine, whatever. And they're like, you're just so cool with it. And I was like, I'll just do whatever. Like just, you know. I'll just do whatever. And they're like, okay, well, thanks for being so chill about it. We're going to call you to Relief Society secretary again. And I was like, okay, I already know how to do the job. So I already have all this stuff set up. Yeah, it was way fun. And we had...
well, maybe you didn't get it right the first couple times.
Right? Yeah. I was kind of wondering that. But, you know, I inherited this really cool spreadsheet. Uh-huh. And I don't know who, like, the spreadsheet wizard was that set up. Like, but it was an attendance tracker. Uh-huh. And we could like we'd take attendance, and it would tell us who hadn't been to church in 3 weeks or more, and how many absences a person had and what their attendance percentage was. And then it like showed them in colors, you know. Uh-huh. And it was so fun because it was like, oh, you want me to run a report? Okay,
here
totally do that. And it was like, I can't do that in Google Sheets, but somebody else could. And so
I love Excel.
Yeah.
I used to be better at it. I used to have reasons to use it all the time.
I always have to call people with Excel questions. I can do a fair amount, but it's always like, I just don't have a ton of use for it. But then when I do, and it's like, I want it to do this. And so I'll call somebody and be like, hey, I want Excel to do this for me. Mm-hmm. And they'll tell me how to do it. And so, but I'm versed enough in it, you know, that I know how to like enter in a formula. So when my friend Nick is like, okay, go to the field and type this in. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like go type it in, and then it works, you know, like, we ordered t-shirts one time, and it was like, I wanted to tell me how many extra large t-shirts I need and how many mediums and how many whatever. And he's like, okay, well, this is what you're going to type in the field. Uh-huh. And so, yeah, it was really cool.
So back to your, chorister calling. Mm-hmm. That was my first calling ever. When I was 13, until I graduated and went to college, I was the ward chorister.
I did that for a long time. Ward chorister is probably, and choir director, probably the callings I've had for the longest amounts of time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I've met quite a few people who were in my ward growing up in Sterling. One of the pianists was a music teacher also. And she's like, I'll just follow you. But I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm 14. I can't even drive. You want me to like steer the whole ward, you know? But it was, and I was terrified, but she taught me everything I needed to know. And it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I think it's a really fun calling.
I like it too.
I like it a lot, but that's probably why they don't want me to do it. They're like, you're just going to have too much fun making everybody sing at tempo.
That's awesome. Yeah. So how often do you get to see your mom and dad?
I usually see them like a couple of times a year. They live in Southeast Arizona. And
they moved far away from Sterling.
Yeah, they did. So from here, it takes, I want to say 15 hours of driving.
Ooh.
And then, so, you know, if you're going to like stop and eat lunch or use the restroom or whatever, it takes longer, but it's a long drive. And I usually fly down at Christmas time, and then probably one other time in the year, depending on what was going on. And 2 or 3 years ago, they got this bug that they wanted to go fishing over the summer. And so they rented a house in Sterling for a little while, basically as like a summer home. And it was really kind of fun because it was the house that my great grandparents lived in on my grandparents' farm. It's this little tiny white house. They call it the White House, but it's just got 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, a living room area, a kitchen, and then like the back porch where the washers and dryers are, and that's it. Like there's nothing else to the house. And it's just this cute white house. It used to be a garage apparently, and then great grandpa moved it from Orem. He bought it in Orem and moved it to Sterling and made it into a house for him and grandma. Yeah. It's really funny. If you know that it used to be a garage, you can totally see it when you're looking at the house. But
so the house next door is pretty old, but the garage, the lady that lives across the street, when they first got married, they lived in the garage that's next door to where I live right now. Yeah. So there's still wallpaper up around the inside of it. And yeah. But it's not a house, it's a garage.
Yeah. Well, this one's like an actual house now. Yeah. Now it is. Yeah. But yeah, it's way fun. And in the back there's a picnic table in the back that my grandfather had built, and an apricot tree that grandpa had planted, which is way fun. Anyway, so I had been going back and forth between there. So like I would sometimes go there and stay there, and they would come up sometimes, and they were up for the summer. The first time they were up there all summer, and I went down as often as I could to go fishing with them because they love to go fishing. But that's is really funny because they like the fish, but nobody's actually up there for the fish. Like they want to go for a drive in the mountains and just look at the trees there. And sit by the water and just enjoy the beauty. Anyway, so because like we catch way more fish than we could ever eat, and we end up like just cooking them for the whole family. You know, like invite everybody over and eat fish. Yeah. But I remember the picnic table in the back was in pretty sorry shape when we first got there, and I spent a couple of weekends there sanding it and getting ready to paint it again. And like I finally like got it all sanded and ready to go and repainted it, and having that picnic table like ready to go and use and eat was so much fun. And then finding out how much baling wire was on it was hilarious because grandpa fixed everything with baling wire. And I remember taking a picture. He'd like wired one of the seats on rather than nailing it on, and like sending it to my Aunt Irene and my dad being like, check this out. Totally grandpa's table. Baling wire all over it. But anyway, when COVID hit in March 2020, the neighborhood where I live has like not fabulous internet, which is funny because Daybreak is supposed to be
it's pretty new.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be like, oh, we're this great community, we're planned and come live here or whatever, and then like the internet is terrible. Yeah. And when everybody had to stay home, the internet just got worse. It just got weighted down, and it was like I can't work online from here. And then when they were like, we're probably gonna put like Salt Lake County on lockdown, and it was like that. Well, then I can't like drive into work. And it was just this like, what do I do? And so my parents were like, well, go live in the Sterling house. And so, I called the Manti telephone company and was like, I need internet at this random little house. And they're like, okay. They're like, has it had a phone line? And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. They're like, how recently? And I was like, I have no idea. I was like, it's old. And I'm pretty sure my great-grandparents had a phone there, but I don't know. I don't know. They're like, I don't know. It would have been a landline. And I'm like, but I don't think it's ever had anything else. And so we put in an internet connection, and I did all of my online teaching from that little White House during COVID.
That's kind of cool.
It was way fun, and it was really neat, to be down there in early March. And then, because, sitting from where I was, I set up my teaching station so that I could see out the front window. And I watched all of the leaves come out, and then watched all the buds on the apricot tree like bloom, and then watched the apricots come on, and then we harvested the apricots in the fall. And it was really neat to see that whole cycle again. you don't see that as much living in the city.
Yeah.
And I really miss that about the country. And then, so for the last 2 years, my parents have been in Sterling and during the summers, and I've seen them way more often because of that. And then just this last year, they were like, we're going to let it go because we'll let it rent other people. So they're in Arizona for this summer, and they're prepping their yard for summer. And I went down there over spring break to help them with a bunch of stuff in the yard. And then I'll probably go down at the beginning of June to help them some more. But yeah.
So you've told us about some tender mercies. You haven't used that word, but I've picked it up that you've had, like you've been able to serve people that has made a difference, not just to people around you, but to you. You've been able to see life, like you just said, when you were at the White House in Sterling. You've been able to have friends who have said the right things at the right times. You've had good callings that have really matched with you. What other tender mercies can you think of that?
Oh, geez, there's so many. One of the things that I notice quite a bit is like people are like the people who are around me are really good about paying attention to promptings of the Spirit, and I don't know if they know that they're doing that all the time. I don't know that we always know if we're following promptings of the Spirit, but I notice it because sometimes that's what I depend on. I have depression, and it is like something that is so prevalent in my life that I have a hard time sometimes, like even functioning in the morning, and having a place to go and something to do is really helpful for me. And that's part of the reason I love my job. Playing music always makes me feel better, which is another reason I love my job. I'm always really happy by the time I get to the end of a school day. And sometimes when I go home in the evening, it's kind of a letdown. And but I'll have friends who will call me and just be like, hey, just wanted to chat. Like, I just wanted to like ask you how things are going. And so, my friend Julie will randomly text me and be like, hey, I'm just thinking about you. Like, and it's like, I don't know, she knows that, like she's following a prompting when she does that. Or my friend McKay will send me a picture of her little boy. We call him Toad. He's 3. And, it's like they'll send me funny pictures sometimes, or like ask for stuff or whatever. And like, I'll go visit, and be like, hey, McKay, let me borrow your kid. I want to play with Toad for a little while. She's like, you don't come to see me anymore. It's like, well, sometimes I do. Sometimes it really is for the kid, but, or like I'll call my friend Michelle and chat with her. And it's funny, like sometimes we don't really talk about anything. Sometimes it's business stuff. She works at a music store, and I buy a lot of stuff through their store for my program. And I'll call and I'm just like, hey, I'm looking for a price on whatever. And sometimes just talking with those people makes me feel better. And it just helps me like move forward, all of those kinds of things are just tender mercies. And I don't know if that's really apparent to people, that like just those little things are really helpful sometimes. But I know that like for me, doing the service projects really is a tender mercy, and trying to figure out all of the logistics of those things. I'm trying to think what else. I think there's a tender mercy in the fact that my car still works. It has more than 260,000 miles on it.
Wow, good job, car.
I know, it's been really good, and it sometimes drips a little bit of oil, but it starts every time I want it to. Like it's just been really good, and I'm not always nice to it. Like it's not always on the nicest roads, but we sure had a lot of fun like in that car. So I recently, actually just last weekend, drove through Valley of the Gods, and that's not a nice road, but it was sure fun, and it was beautiful. We had a great time, and that car has been the main vehicle that I've driven doing my road project. I drove recently, just finished driving every mile of highway in Utah.
Really?
Really.
That is super awesome.
I looked up once how many miles it is. It's like 7,000 miles of highway or something. That number is probably way off because I'm not good at remembering stuff. But my friend McKay, who lives in West Jordan, just before I moved in with her and got the job down here in Saratoga Springs, she asked me, she's like, just how many roads have you been on in Utah? I was like, I don't know, a lot. Like, small town people drive around a lot to do business. And I would just like get in the car with Dad, because if I was in the car with Dad, he would buy me M&Ms at some point, you know? It's like, Dad's going to buy me candy and a soda if I go with him. And so we would always beg to go with Dad because he was a pushover. Oh, I love my dad. Hi, Dad. But we would go around with him. And so anyway, we pulled out a road map one time and a highlighter, and I marked all the roads that I could remember that I'd been on. And it was just surprisingly a lot of roadways. And I was like, I wonder how long it would take to finish it. And McKay's like, I don't know, but we should try. And we started like planning road trips to see like how much we could do. And that was probably 10 or 12 years ago. And I just finished in March. Actually, when we went down to Bluff to do that first delivery, we took a long time to get back because we went across Cedar Mesa.
Perfect.
I know, yeah. From Bluff, we went up the Moki Dugway and then across Cedar Mesa, and then we went over to Halls Ferry Crossing because I had to ride the ferry. There's a ferry part of the Utah highway system. I had to ride the ferry, and I was like more excited than I should have been to be riding a ferry. It's only a few miles on the ferry, you know, and I was just like so excited. And I'm sure my friend Becky, who was with me, was like, "Oh my gosh, she's such a nerd." But I was so excited because it meant that I was like so close to being done, just, you know, from that point forward. Yeah. And it was really neat. And I think that, you know, the thing that I mentioned at the beginning about that love of nature and that spiritual feeling you get from being in nature, it was really amplified by that project. Like just driving all over the place and being like, calling up a friend and being like, hey, I want to drive out. Like, we're going to go to this random place today. And, you know, will you come with me? And, you know, we'd be like driving the Mirror Lake Highway. And it was like, hey, we need to drive the Mirror Lake Highway. And then when we get up here by this corner of Wyoming, we need to find this road so that we can come back on this highway and then make this turn and drive through these small towns, you know. And it's just been way fun. Like, I've had so much fun with my friends. Clara was with me when we did Mirror Lake Highway. And there was one instance when we were coming around a turn, kind of going downhill, and I went to slow down, and then we had to stop. Well, she wanted to take a picture, so it was like, okay, stop here so we can take a picture of this sign. It had the elevation. We were up, I can't remember by which mountain, and so like I stopped and I almost missed the sign, so I braked kind of hard, and like we had a whole can of peanuts that just scattered all over the floor of the car, and we were laughing so hard, like we couldn't hardly even control ourselves. But we have a picture somewhere. Clara has a picture of my car with the snow on Mirror Lake Highway taller than my car.
Wow.
When we did that, the day we spilled the peanuts in the car. But we were able to see so many cool things just on that trip. It was really neat, just amazing. And, you know, I had a friend, Marissa, who was with me when we actually did Skyline Drive and then came down over, there's a reservoir up above Emery County. I think it was Joe's Valley, because we turned up above Ephraim to go down, so that must have been Joe's Valley. So, but we had decided to go. It was a really hot summer day, and so we drove up Fairview Canyon to catch Skyline Drive up there. And between that turnoff and down to like kind of above Ephraim Spring City is Mountain Road, and it's not maintained, and so you don't really know like what the condition of the road is. Mm-hmm. So when I had called my friend Marissa, I was like, I want to do this thing. Like, I have to do some of these roads over in Emery County, and I have to go down past this reservoir. And I'm like, but in order to get there, I want to try the Skyline Drive because I'm really curious about it. And she's like, sure, I'll go with you. And it was supposed to be like 108 degrees in the valley that day. And I was like, yeah, we'll be at high elevation. It'll definitely be cooler up there. And so we get out there and we're like driving across these roads, and like we come across this giant mud puddle. And we're like, this is going to be awesome. So I'm like taking a picture of it because my dad's always driving in places like that. And like we drive through the mud puddle and like splash mud everywhere and everything. And then we going a little farther, and we came across the ditch that was like straight across the road. And it was kind of deep. We're like, we're not sure really what to do about that. So we looked at it and figured, well, it's not very wide. Maybe we can just, like the tires are big enough, we can just drive over it. Anyway, when we got to a point where the roads were smoothing out, we were stopped by some people who were coming toward us, and they were like, how's the road that way? And we're like, it's kind of bad. They're like, is it passable? And it's like, well, you have to have pretty good clearance. And we kind of told him what we're there, and he kind of looked at our car and was like, you drove that through what you just described? And I was like, well, yeah, that's how we got here. You just have to be careful. Anyway, we ended up finishing that drive and coming back, and I had to get my tires checked, because I came back, and the next morning one of the tires was like totally flat. And at some point on the way back, we'd hit a nail. And actually, I think it happened like a few blocks from my house.
Oh,
and it was like I drove all that way and everything was fine until I like hit a nail a few blocks from my house, and now the tire's flat the next morning. Anyway, so I had to take it in to get to have them like check out the tires, because the guy who came and put air in it was like, I don't know if it's gonna last. He's like, it's in kind of a weird spot. And so I was like, well, okay, like it was kind of in a weird, like kind of by the tread, but like kind of by the wall, and they weren't sure if it was gonna hold or whatever. So anyway, the guy was like, it's way out of alignment. I was like, yeah, I know. He's like, what have you been doing? And I was like, and I kind of told him, and he was like, that's, he's like, can we align it for you? And I was like, I would love that. Please do. But anyway, after driving through Valley of the Gods, I have to have it aligned again. So I have an appointment to get it aligned next week. But the fact that car still works is a huge blessing for me, because I don't think I could afford to get another one right now. At least not one that will do the same kinds of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been so much fun. And that whole project, driving all the roads, was way fun. And that really kept me going a lot too. That turned out to be a pretty big blessing, and a lot of adventure.
Cool. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to you to know that you belong to the tribe of Israel?
I think, the first thing, as I've been listening to the podcast, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, what the aunt says to the Spider-Man kid. I'm really sad that I can't remember her name, but she basically tells them, with great power comes great responsibility. And it's funny that like my life relates back to Spider-Man, but whose doesn't really? So, anyway, like for us, like for me, it's really important. I know that I have, like, my dad is from the tribe of Ephraim, and my mom is from Manasseh, and so there's a pretty solid connection to the tribe of Israel in our family. And it's for us, it's been a lot of like trying to figure out family history. The San Carlos Apache side has been really hard to figure out. It's been really hard to find names, but every time we find one, it's just a treasure and so special. And they come in miraculous ways. And every time, we step forward to share the gospel, something amazing happens. My dad served a mission and ended up with a wife,
Yeah.
And that's been such a cool thing to see. And, that sharing of the gospel and to share that love with others is really important. When I was coming back from Bluff this last time, I had a conversation with my friend Becky, who was with me, and in our singles ward on Mother's Day, we were studying the talk Infuriating Unfairness from conference, which was like my friend Anita, who taught it, did a beautiful job, but it was like that's tricky territory in a singles ward in a relief society to be on Mother's Day to be talking about unfairness. And my friend Becky that I was with, we listened to that talk and had a conversation about how like we're told in that talk, that there are different forms of unfairness, and in one example, the story of the people waiting to throw rocks at the woman caught in adultery comes up, and then there are more examples about unfairness given, and then that rock throwing thing comes back at the end, and I got the impression that like as far as being stone catchers, like, they talk about being stone catchers and protecting those that have had problems and stuff, and helping them, and that idea of being a stone catcher is doing the Lord's work and helping Christ heal people and helping Christ protect people. But that involves more than just settling like unfairnesses between two groups of people, like, the stone throwers and, the woman. But it's also talking about trying to help others through other kinds of unfairnesses. And, and I was kind of explaining this thought to my friend Becky, and she looks at me and she's like, "You mean like delivering books to people who just need a little bit of happiness?" And I was like, yeah, I guess so. But that service that we do to other people is incredibly important, because it is the Lord's work. And when we're following the promptings of the Savior, we're helping people heal and helping guide others. And if we step forward and share the gospel in whatever form we can, whether it's actually explicitly teaching about the gospel, or just through service and kindness, or, letting somebody in traffic, or using your turning signal in traffic, all of those things are important to us. Mm-hmm. And as far as being a member of the tribe of Israel, like everybody who is in the church is part of that, and we have that responsibility. And it's important. Our work is very important.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I have very much enjoyed this time. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I loved it. Way fun.
So as I read my personal scriptures, as I make time for it, which I am not always diligent about doing, but sometimes, some days I am, I also try to read one general conference talk along with it. I don't look up things. I just read them in order. This past week I read President Nelson's "Christ is risen, faith in him will move mountains." Here's some things that I highlighted. The Lord understands our mortal weakness. We all falter at times, but he also knows of our great potential. The mustard seed starts small but grows into a large tree, enough for birds to nest in its branches. The mustard seed represents a small but growing faith. I also really like this one. Moving your mountains may require a miracle. Learn about miracles. Miracles come according to your faith in the Lord. And then another part that I loved, he says, choose to believe in Jesus Christ. Study with the desire to believe, rather than with the hope that you can find a flaw in the fabric of a prophet's life or a discrepancy in the scriptures. Stop increasing your doubts by rehearsing them with other doubters. I just love those things. And there were some other things I highlighted in this talk. Funny thing is, not funny thing, but the funny thing is, I had forgotten a lot of these things that he had told us, had advised us, had commanded us, had promised us. And that's why I try to read them. And I hopefully can get through them a couple times before the next conference. But those were really, really great thoughts. I mean, faith doesn't have to be big, and learning about miracles helps us to recognize them in our lives. And I love that we should choose to believe. Doesn't mean we know. It means we want to know. And some of the other guests we've had on this, that I've had on this podcast, have said the same kind of thing. I don't know everything. I just feel like it's right. So those are my thoughts for you today. And I hope that maybe something that Ruth said or something that I just mentioned, I hope that it uplifts your day and makes your week better. And I hope you have a super wonderful, awesome day. Tribe of Testimonies is not affiliated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The music is a traditional hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, arranged and performed by Kyle Forsyth. If you know someone who might be interested in being a guest, please reach out to me at tribeoftestimonies@gmail.com.